1:45 on that day, so just a few hours before they fell critically ill on the bench behind us, which is still inside that white and yellow forensic tent. What's also interesting, the BMW vehicle, we understand, was only found on Monday in the Sainsbury's car park, the top deck of the Sainsbury's car park. And so there was a huge police operation there. It was all sealed off, as you can imagine. Counter-terrorism police, masked men turned up, and it was removed. But that was 8 days after this all unfolded. So that is crucial. And this CCTV, of course, shows the car driving along, like I say, a mile from this location where we are just a few hours before it all unfolded.
So that's helping police fit together some of the holes in the timeline, isn't it? Do they think that he drove directly from his home here, or is there still space to be filled in?
There's still, I think, space to be filled in, but this is what they're doing critically, is trying to find and form this timeline of what Mr. Skripal and his daughter did. We know they arrived here, we know that they parked in the Sainsbury's car park, and then, of course, went to the Zizi's restaurant and the Mill pub, which is all in this vicinity of the Maltings Shopping Centre. We did see more action yesterday, actually, from just behind the Mill pub, which we know has traces of this nerve agent in it. We know that they went there for a drink before they became ill. Yesterday there was a lot of forensic officers there. They seem to be removing objects from the pub, which will now be analysed. There's also been activity in a town in Dorset called Gillingham, which is about 30 miles from here. That was the recovery vehicle that removed Mr. Skripal's car. That was hauled up by the military, loaded onto their big trucks, and then taken off. It was covered in tarpaulin. So that's another aspect which will now be analysed, probably at Porton Down. We know a number of the emergency vehicles have gone there for further testing. And of course today this news that there will be a greater investment, £48 million, into a centre which will protect against chemical attacks such as this one. I think there has been this realisation that perhaps our capabilities have been overlooked following this incident, and now this ramping up of the government, we expect to see a lot more funding.
Okay, Rebecca, thanks very much for that. We'll talk more about the anthrax, I think, with Alistair. But first of all, let's go to Moscow and our correspondent Lisa Holland there. Strong words from Russia, branding the Prime Minister here insane.
Yes, as the days go by on this, absolutely nothing is being said which appears to be pouring oil on troubled waters, either from Moscow or indeed from London. And we heard Boris Johnson, the Foreign Secretary, of course, saying that Russia was being smug and sarcastic. Then you have the Russians saying what Britain's accusing them of is absolutely insane. Some attempt by the Russians this morning almost to claim a moral higher ground, if there is one, by saying, as polite people, we will not declare our response before we first talk to our British colleagues. We should act like gentlemen, although there are fewer and fewer of them in the world. So Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, they're essentially saying that when they make their announcement about expelling British diplomats from Moscow, as of course everybody expects, given that Britain is expelling Russian diplomats from London, that they will inform Britain first before they put it on the airwaves. That's a reference to Theresa May making her announcement in the Commons, seemingly without notifying the Russians about what she was going to do before that. The Russians are also pretty annoyed about what happened at the United Nations yesterday, making the point today that if they, the Russians, haven't been given any sort of information or details or had the answers to the questions they have posed about what happened in Salisbury, information that they have asked for about the nerve agent, a sample of the nerve agent, if the Russians haven't been given that, then surely no other country can have been given that. Therefore, why are all these other countries lining up to support Britain? And the wider picture here, though, is that Russia is attempting to say that Britain, America, the West are using this to divert attention from what's going on in Syria, so that if the Russians can be blamed for using chemical weapons in England, then the Russians will be blamed for the use of any kind of chemical weapons in Syria.
Lisa, thanks very much. Let's cross to Bristol. The Defence Secretary, Gavin Williamson, is making a speech there, expecting to announce the vaccination of British troops against anthrax. Let's listen in.
Prosperity across our continent, unparalleled in its history. Today, our armed forces continue to uphold this proud tradition. They're keeping us safe across the world. Our pilots are destroying terrorist targets in Iraq and Syria, and policing Eastern European skies against the increasing threat from Russia. Our soldiers stand sentinel with our NATO allies in Estonia and Poland to deter this threat. We're strengthening the security of Afghanistan and South Sudan, helping establish stability and giving democracy the chance to grow and to flourish. Our sailors are countering international piracy, policing our waters and securing safe passage for the ships that support our global trade. Beneath the waves, our nuclear submarines go undetected as submariners on patrol every day of every year, providing our ultimate defence against the most deadly dangers to our way of life. In the last few weeks alone, our forces have provided vital assistance. When it comes to non-state actors, we're seeing a generational shift, with terrorist organisations able to access increasingly sophisticated weapons, and state-based dangers are increasing. Back in 2010, we did not believe they posed as a credible threat. Its economy is under pressure. It is still prioritising military expenditure, investing in highly capable equipment across all domains, including long-range surface-to-air missiles, T-90 tanks, new advanced submarines, long-range precision strike systems, the Iskander ballistic missiles, and a new range of Blackjack strategic bombers. And the new nuclear systems that President Putin recently boasted about in his State of the Nation address. What is also clear is that the Kremlin is ripping up the international rule book, using its growing hybrid capabilities to subvert, undermine and influence countries around the world. Its cyber operations are active and brazen. It uses social media to muddy the waters and spread confusion. Last year, Russia's military intelligence organization directed the NotPetya ransomware activity, overwhelming systems in Ukraine from its power grid to its postal service, and causing hundreds of millions of pounds of damage to companies around the world, including here in the United Kingdom. But Russia is capable of much more. It is already increasingly using proxies to undermine sovereign states. Its involvement in the Ukraine conflict has cost tens of thousands of lives. In Syria, we're seeing a humanitarian crisis where Russia is using private military companies such as the Wagner Group to reduce their liability and limit criticism on the world stage. Meanwhile, Russia is also using its operatives insidiously to interfere in the political processes of other nations. Security authorities have compelling evidence to show Russia was involved in the attempted 2016 coup in Montenegro, just prior to that country's joining NATO. And if we doubted the threat Russia poses to our citizens, we only have to look at the shocking example of their reckless attack on Salisbury. But against this backdrop of threats, we shouldn't forget that our armed forces remain truly world-class, and we're giving them the capabilities to respond. For example, we know the chemical threat doesn't just come from Russia, but from other actors. So we're evolving the capability to meet the danger. I made the decision to offer the anthrax vaccine to our forces at the highest readiness, providing them with vital protections against a deadly danger. And today I can announce that we're building on our world-class expertise at the Defence Science and Technology Laboratory at Porton Down. We're investing £48 million in a new chemical weapons defence centre to maintain our cutting edge in chemical analysis and defence. We've brought together Defence's world-renowned explosive ordnance expertise with chemical, biological, radiological and nuclear specialists. And we're continuing to invest and explore new ways and new capabilities to deal with this threat. More broadly, our armed forces are internationally recognised as having an almost matchless combination of capability and experience, able to field a well-equipped army division with armoured brigades, strike brigades and an air assault brigade, able to project power at a distance through an expeditionary air group based on the state-of-the-art Typhoon and the new F-35 Lightning that will soon embark upon our aircraft carriers. Those carriers, in turn, will form part of a hard-hitting maritime task group, including modern destroyers, frigates, submarines and commando forces. All this, plus the world's best special forces and some of the most advanced intelligence gathering and analytical capabilities in the alliance. These are all the hallmarks of a serious military nation, able to conduct first night, first strike attacks, with the technology to go into contested air, sea and land space, to project power at range from the United Kingdom, and make a major contribution to deterring threats, not just in the Euro-Atlantic area, but across the globe. Many of these forces are on operations and missions today. We're making a major contribution to the campaign that has crippled Daesh, where we've helped to train over 60,000 Iraqi security forces, seen the first UK use of offensive cyber in combat, and our Air Force is operating at an intensity not seen in more than 25 years. We're training the Afghan and Nigerian security forces and even the US Marine Corps. And this month, we have deployed HMS Trenchant to the Arctic with the United States Navy on ISACs 2018, confirming our ability to operate under the ice. Our operational experience and prowess is the reason the UK has played an important leadership role in NATO since its formation, and the reason we lead a range of international divisions and operations right around the globe. We're the preferred operational partner for other top-tier Western militaries, particularly the United States and France, who also acknowledge that they too must modernise to stay ahead of our adversaries. But after a long period of relative peace, threats are increasing again. So we have arrived at a profound moment in our history, a crossroads where the choice before us as a nation is simple: to sit back and let events overtake us, or step forward, seizing the moment as we leave the European Union to shape our vision for a bold, more prosperous Britain, a Britain proud of its past and confident of its future. A Britain ready to reassert its right to do global good in a dangerous and unpredictable world. A Britain able to protect our security and prosperity at home and abroad. After all, our armed forces are the face of global Britain, enhancing our international reputation, epitomising everything that is great about our nation. We talk about soft power, and we must acknowledge the amazing work of the Foreign Office and DFID, but also of business and organisations like the British Council in promoting Britain's values around the world. Our armed forces work with them, delivering aid in the wake of Hurricane Irma, minesweeping in the Gulf, and bringing medical support in the fight against Ebola in West Africa. But let's be clear. Soft power only works because hard power stands behind it. And that is what our armed forces deliver and why they are so important to our future. That's why this is our moment to retain our competitive advantage and invest in hard power capabilities. And that is why we have launched our Modernising Defence programme. It will make sure that our country can respond to the changing character of warfare and can deter and, if necessary, contest the new threats we face to British interests.